Hello. To start our day out, we're taking a trip a mere 180 feet skywards, but 1,200 years back in history. We've come to Dudley to talk about it in the past, to look at the town, and to see something of the Black Country around it. As the focal point around which the town of Dudley grew, indeed the very reason for its existence, no day out here can ignore the castle. It stands on top of a hill which has been inhabited almost without a break since Saxon times. Even today, it's the permanent home for the 1,500-odd inmates of Dudley's famous zoo. Hello, Mr. Taylor. It was a very nice trip, yes. Plenty of fresh air. I'm going a bit higher now, right up to the top of the keep. Thanks. Cheerio. It was a John de Somery who built the great 14th century keep. It's still an outstanding feature of the Black Country skyline, and it's said you can see 9 counties from the top. Its builder was the archetypal robber baron, and documents survive describing the protection rackets he ran to raise funds for his castle building. Murder and extortion were second nature, it seems, to this baronial thug, and apparently no one around here was safe from him. Well, Sir John certainly chose an impregnable position for his castle. I shouldn't think any enemy, and he must have made quite a few, could approach within 5 miles without being spotted from the battlements up here. Today, there is Dudley and the Black Country, laid out like a map. Over there is Dudley Top Church, as they call it, St. Thomas's, and like a lot of other old buildings in the Black Country, it's black because it spent 200 years in smoke and grime, which is why the Black Country got its name. To the east over there is the city of Birmingham and the great sprawling West Midlands conurbation, and to the north, Tipton and the Black Country Museum. Fascinating place, much more about that later. Most of the castle buildings date from Elizabethan times, but it was the Civil War that saw the end of the castle as a fortification. By then, Dudley's earls had made so much money out of mining that they were moved out of the draughty castle into Himley Hall a few miles away. Well, then the castle was let out as workshops. One of the industries was making buttons, although the local gossips said they were turning out bad halfpennies. Anyway, it was these activities which probably led to the disastrous fire of 1750. The castle was left to burn for 3 days and 3 nights. The reason for that was that another local story was that it was used as a gunpowder store. No one wanted to put the fire out and risk being blown to bits. The use of the grounds as a place of recreation is by no means a 20th century development. As long ago as 1790, the ruined castle and its abandoned limestone mine workings were opened up as a pleasure resort. And it was in the 1930s that Dudley Council invited the fashionable architects Lubetkin and Tecton to design a zoo. The old limestone pits which pockmarked the hill were turned into enclosures for the bigger animals, although even some of these seemed to find it a little bit cramped. Wasn't there a bit of a problem with the bears or something with the old tunnel?
Well, at one stage, yes, we used one of the old caved-in mine workings originally as a bear enclosure, and one winter a bear completely disappeared, and we presumed it had gone down a hole, but we didn't know that the hole went so far into the hill. And we didn't see the bear again for several months. We thought we'd lost it altogether. In fact, it hibernated somewhere down in one of these caves. And one day in the spring, there was a bit of a grovelling around the entrance, which by now had been blocked off, and a very thin bear appeared, having hibernated for about 6 months in the mine workings.
I notice also, wandering around, that you use the moat in just about the best way that you possibly could use it.
Yes, we have seals and sea lions and hippopotami and all the other sorts of aquatic animals in the moat.
Do you know of any other zoo in a castle, for goodness sake? I think it must be most unusual.
This is unique. I don't know of any other zoo in the world which has a castle in its centre. And I've been to quite a lot of other zoos. I just don't know one like this.
And those black bears still seem to be getting up to some tricks. How long does he sit up there?
And sometimes he goes up there for several hours, but I think he's up there at the moment just to see what we're doing.
Well, many of the more striking animals in Dudley Zoo are financed by local firms. This chap, for instance, is sponsored rather fittingly by a company making hydraulic platforms. And it's because of donations like this that the zoo directors are able to keep the entrance fees fairly competitive. For its size, the zoo boasts a surprising variety of animals, 200 species from many distant and remote parts of the world. A short stroll from the zoo gates up Castle Hill brings you to Dudley's town centre. Industry was big business here when Birmingham was still a hamlet, and the reason, extensive mineral deposits of iron, coal and limestone. William, Earl of Dudley, stands at the foot of his castle looking towards the market square. He was one of the most successful exploiters of this wealth, which was, after all, his. By the middle of the 19th century, his family's gross income was £120,000 a year, which converts to about £2.5 million in today's money. They owned 10 coal mines, several limestone mines, a clay pit, 3 iron foundries, a mineral railway, a score of cottages and farms, and they paid the wages of most of Dudley's inhabitants. This was the time when all the members of a family were put to work, and even the Staffordshire Bull Terrier could earn his keep as a prize fighter. Well, in that atmosphere, trade flourished. Still does today, as you can see. Market day in Dudley is supposed to be on Tuesdays, Thursdays and Fridays, but it seems to be going on 6 days a week. These are the descendants, these people here, of those who made the Black Country famous when it was the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution, the cradle of industry. You ask them, they'll tell you that they are proud of their heritage. They're proud of the strength and the skills that they've been born with. And they're also justly famous outside for a self-mocking sense of humour. In fact, there's quite a nice rhyme about the Black Countrymen, which goes, "I dreamed I was dead and to heaven did go. Where did Yum come from, they wanted to know. From Black Country, says I. St. Peter did stare. Yum come right in, Yum the first one from there." Well, in the middle of the market stands a Victorian drinking fountain given to the townsfolk by a Countess of Dudley in the vain hope of tempering the evils of hard liquor. But the Black Countryman worked hard, and so he drank hard, and woe betide a nagging wife too. 100 years ago, she could be dragged off to market with a halter round her neck and sold to the highest bidder. "50 years ago, this would have been a commonplace sight in Dudley's Market Square as the Cradley Heath tram was switched for its return journey. The best place to see a tram now is at Dudley's Black Country Museum, a rapidly expanding open-air project reflecting the past life of the area. Since it opened in 1978, over 350,000 visitors of all ages have passed through its gates. This tram dates from the 1920s and was lovingly restored in 1974, having spent over 40 years as a summer house at the bottom of a vegetable garden. There we are, Fred. You better... Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Today's driver-conductor is Fred Christian. His father was a tram driver and probably drove this very vehicle when it was in service in the Stourbridge area between 1920 and 30. Entrance to the museum costs £1.50 for adults, 80p for children and pensioners, and each ticket includes a single journey back into history on Fred Christian's tram. I'm going to get off at the colliery first, so I shall be saying goodbye to you in a minute. It makes the half-mile trip from the museum car park to the village site at regular intervals. It's a bit bumpy, but it's the best way down to the museum's main attractions. The Black Country Museum is sited on part of the estates belonging to, yes, the Earls of Dudley. And more than 40 old abandoned mine shafts have been found on this 26-acre derelict land. And because coal mining was such an important part of the Black Country's history, they decided that when they discovered one completely lined shaft, that they ought to immediately set about creating a working exhibit on the spot. Iron, coal, limestone and clay have made the Black Country what it is today. So runs another rhyme. And in 1850, more than 20,000 men, women and children were employed in Black Country pits. The work was dirty, difficult and dangerous. It was quite common for 1 in 10 of the workforce to die through accident or disease in any one year. The coal was used for smelting iron, burning lime and firing bricks. It kept the home fires burning and provided fuel for thousands of steam engines and furnaces. The idea of building this museum goes back about 30 years, but nothing much happened until the mid-70s. Then, at that time, which was only about 7 years ago, something I find very hard to believe, this site was completely derelict. All we had were those old 19th century lime kilns over there. The shop and the bridge, the chemist's shop, the 19th century church and the pub have all been brought here from different parts of the Black Country, brick by brick, and re-erected on this site. To get into the village, every visitor crosses this beautiful cast iron bridge, which was built in 1879, and then more or less exactly 100 years later, it was moved during a road widening scheme from its place in Broad Street in Wolverhampton. There's a lot more evidence of its past down below. Come and have a look. They put ridges in the brick floors so that the horses could get a grip with their hooves. I suppose this is a pretty typical Victorian canal bridge. But the real evidence of the past is here, look. As the canal boats moved under the bridge and perhaps round the bend in the canal, the hawsers or the ropes caught the metalwork of the bridge and wore deep grooves like this, which you can still see and which you can often find in canal bridges of this period. Although the museum concentrates on the 19th century, it is, to all intents and purposes, a living village. So the pub, the shops, the little cottages are staffed by people in the real costumes of the period. So my first stop was at Gregory's store, where I found Beryl Goodyear. Oh, hello, Beryl.
Hello.
Gosh, this is just like a shop I used to go into as a little boy. How old is it, actually?
Well, this is a shop that we've put back to the turn of the century, in the 1900s. Being a general store, you see, there wasn't always the money about to go into town, so you'd have to sell practically everything. There'd be paraffin round the back. The drapery side was down that side with the hammers and nails just underneath the counter. And then in the centre, of course, everything was sold loose, all in great big sacks on the floor and drawers across the back.
Look at anyone's shelf and you get a terrific selection, don't you? I can see Sentinel nightlights to renovating outfit to Dundee marmalade.
Well, selling practically everything, of course.
Yes, Coleman's mustard and flypapers. Of course, a shop like this was very much the centre of the community, wasn't it?
Oh, yes. Everybody would know everybody's business in a shop like this.
What are the things that you like best or remember best in this shop, Beryl?
Well, I think it's the sounds, like the ting of the bell. I can remember from a little girl going in sweet shops and hearing the bell. And then, of course, the bacon slicer. The rumble of the old bacon slicer. Beautiful action, that.
Yes, that's right. There'd be a big side of bacon on there.
That's it, yes. They cured their own bacon, in fact. But, of course, best of all, I think, is the till. There we are. Penny farthing to you, sir.
Yeah. Well, next to Gregory's store is the chainmaker's house, so called because out at the back is a small chain and metalwork shop. The heart of the house is the back room, and the best way there is down the entry. In this particular back room, even on the hottest day of the year, you can expect to find a glowing fire and the even warmer personality of Gaynor Iddles. Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Mrs. Iddles. The Black Country kitchen door was always open, was it?
It was, yes. Come inside.
Thank
Make
you
yourself
very
at home. Sit over there.
Oh, lovely. What, by the fire?
Yes, of course.
In the
Lovely,
old
isn't
man's
it?
chair?
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
that's beautiful.
Yes.
What a lovely old grate. I think people get quite surprised, don't they, when they see the grate in the back kitchen?
Oh, yes, we have a lot of visitors here who stand and reminisce about their early childhood.
I noticed the old man's got his
Yes.
underclothes, his vest
Yes,
and his
his
long
undervest.
johns.
Yes, yes.
I do remember sitting by a lovely warm fireplace like this when I was quite a little boy. And the same smells are wafting across the
Yes.
kitchen. What's the response of people, Gaynor, when they see the grate and the bacon cooking like that? What do the children think?
There's always silence because I like to eat anything relating to food. And if I mention that the father only had the bacon in those days and the children only got the bread like this dipped up in the hot fat, they often say it's the other way around now in our house.
So the kitchen grate was the centrepiece of the family, wasn't it?
Yes, this is all where all the activity of the home went on. It was the real centrepiece of the room.
And in the
where
winter, it'd be the
yes,
warmest place.
Yes,
for them.
all very nice and cosy in the winter, very hot though in the summer. You'll notice the cupboard over here where she kept all the crockery, with newspaper on the shelves, all cut out nice and fancy. And also notice that all the best things are up on the top shelf. The things were only fetched down on special occasions. There you are.
Oh, thank
There's
you
a nice
very much,
sandwich,
Gaynor.
nice and hot and nice and crisp.
That's
Hope you enjoy
lovely.
it.
Thank you. A Black Country bacon butty. Many thanks. Well, a must for any visitor to the museum is also to see chain being made in the traditional manner by the resident chainmaker, Don Payne. Now, chain making is a hot and noisy and a pretty exhausting business. And at the turn of this century, chain makers were working a 12-hour day, 6 days a week. And in that time would normally be expected to turn and shut 900 links a day. That's roughly 5,500 a week. It wasn't just men. Mrs. Lucy Woodall of Old Hill near Dudley was still working a hearth like this as recently as 1970 at the splendid age of 71. She started as a girl of 13 in 1912 for 4 shillings a week and worked from 7 till 7 on a weekday and from 7 till 2 on a Saturday. Even Don doesn't work that hard, but you can see him making chains at the museum and even buy one of his hand-forged chain links if you like. As for Sunday, that was the Lord's Day, and this chapel was moved to the museum from Netherton, where slipping foundations and a dwindling flock threatened an early doomsday. It was to the cool and quiet of a place like this that the Victorian chainmakers would make their way each week. On the 7th day, they rested. After a 72-hour working week, they came here and gave thanks to the Lord God for their daily bread. Since its rebuilding, the chapel has been rededicated as a place of worship. Right next to the chapel is a building that many Black Country folk can still remember, Mr. Emile Doux's chemist shop, which used to be in Netherton High Street. If you go along to the museum on a Friday, you'll find Mr. Bennett behind the counter.
Good morning, boys and girls. Where did you say you are from? Lichfield. Oh, yes. Charnwood, isn't it?
Yes.
That reminds me of the Charnwood Forest in Leicestershire. I've been there. That's where Lady Jane Grey had her home. You want some pills, don't you? We better get on with making them, haven't we? So when we've worked it, the liquids and the powders to make a lovely pill mass, we put them on the deck of the pill machine. You see that in 2 parts. The deck, the cutters and the receiving tray. And there's a roller. Not like your mum's rolling pin. This is flat because we're going to roll this and then make round pills like tiny table tennis balls. You'd like that, wouldn't you? Do you see what's happened there? Now that pill mass had gone like a stick of chalk. It's wrong. Pills this end would be too big, wouldn't they? So Mr. Dool was a good old-fashioned chemist. Do you know, he was working from 1908 to 1968. And then he was about 80 when he retired. We call this a pill pipe. It's the only pipe in the world we know that has no hole in the centre. Press these cutters together. It's like your two front teeth meeting to bite a piece of chocolate. But, oh, square cushions. What's happened to the round pill? Well, those are just like our old friend licorice and menthol pellets. Those little black sweets. Some call them imps nowadays. There they are. Mr. Dool's old stock. That's 40, 50 years old. I can't share them with you. Look what's happened.
The original Emile Dool, whose family came from the Low Countries, clearly couldn't resist trying out the wares of travelling salesmen. When the contents of his shop were offered to the museum by his daughter, along with the original wooden fittings and medicine bottles, much of the stock was found to be in perfect condition, and the variety of pills and potions and powders was staggering. In 1978, the museum was able to acquire the exterior wooden facade and add the finishing touches to what is now a unique working exhibit. The ultimate aim of the Black Country Museum is to recreate the total atmosphere of a past way of life, right down to the smallest details. Perhaps above all, as Stuart Home, keeper of social and industrial history at the museum, told me, it is the presence of people.
We would love to be able to bring in as many Black Country people as possible, and to some extent I think our visitors do this for us. I think our buildings really come to life well, in two ways. One is our own guides, many of whom are Black Country people, but it's actually the visitors, the older visitors, when they come along and they get completely overcome, I think, by nostalgia. Sometimes, of course, they're saying how terrible it was in those days, but on the whole, they remember the best things, I think.
Yes, they'll burst into tears sometimes.
Oh, absolutely, yes, yes. And we feel quite moved when that happens. We feel we have perhaps achieved something there. You know, we have created an accurate environment.
The biggest question of all is, how the dickens do you do it? I see there's a crate full of bricks here with numbers on. Is that really the answer?
That's right. That's exactly how we do it. We number every brick, at least every facing brick. We take them all down, pack them into these wooden crates, ship them back here, and then put them back in reverse order. And that gives us, we find, a much more authentic appearance.
To the extent that on the side of the pub, I see you've even replaced the bricks in such an exact order that you can see the original advertisement that was painted on them.
That's right.
For plants.
I think some people refuse to believe that that's actually been done genuinely, but it is quite genuine.
With no major rivers in the area, it's not surprising that Black Countrymen took an early lead in developing our canal system. The Dudley Canal Tunnel, I found, an impressive proof of their engineering skills. And you can take a short boat trip into the tunnel to see for yourself.
The story of the tunnel starts right here. Its purpose was to take limestone from under the hills of Dudley out to the main line of the Birmingham Canal navigation and also into the museum site, because before it was a museum, it was a limestone works.
Commentary by John Rudge of the Dudley Canal Trust, whose members reopened the derelict tunnel 10 years ago.
Now here's a nice spooky place for you. Something out of an horror movie. If anybody's worried about the safety of the tunnel, the walls and the roof are 3 feet thick. So if it falls on you, it'll flatten you.
Like many of the early canal tunnels, and this was completed in 1792, there's no towpath and little ventilation, and the Trust use electric boats for the 45-minute journey. There are some 5,000 yards of waterway under Dudley's lofty Castle Hill. Some of it is cut off and abandoned. Other parts, like this spot, are completely accessible. This is Cathedral Arch, and it vaults the largest underground canal junction in the world. Down there is the main tunnel. Leading off are other branch tunnels going down to other abandoned mines. And the acoustics in the place, whoo, you hear that, are fantastic.
If you look up when you get to the end of this brick wall, you'll see a beautiful formation of stalactites round the side of an old construction shaft. The stalactites are in waves, that's because of passing over the layers of limestone for over 200 years. And they're a creamy colour due to the oxide in the ground above us. This was an old construction shaft and has been kept over since 1792.
With no towpath, the boatmen had to use both brain and brawn to get through the 2-mile tunnel. These holes in the roof, now patched up with mortar, were made by the forbidden practice called shafting, pushing a boat hook into the ceiling and walking along the cargo, at best damaging to the brickwork, at worst it could bring down the roof. The horses which normally did the pulling would be unhitched and walked over the hill through the centre of Dudley, and professional leggers were available for hire at either end of the tunnel to work the boats through by pushing against the walls with their feet. And one of the features of this trip is that the more energetic visitor can even have a go at this.
It is at this point on the journey that I ask for volunteers amongst our passengers to leg the boat down the tunnel the way it used to be done in the old days.
Right. Come on, Helen. Helen from Hales Owen, who's 11, is going to help me leg the boat down. Put your feet up towards the wall, Helen, that's it. And I'm going to lie this way. All right. Well, put your head on my shoulder. I think that's how you do it. That's it. Can you reach with your feet on the wall? Can you touch? Right, just leg them along, that's it. Whew. She's doing well, isn't she? You know, the trouble with this job is that you get this water dripping on your face all the time. Still, I suppose that's all part of it. And when the professional leggers did this job in the 1850s, they were paid 7p for the 3-hour trip. Whew. Well, of course, when the Factories Act came in, it tended to have quite an influence on doing this kind of work, which, quite honestly, I'm sure Helen's going to agree is nothing short of slave labour. Whew. Oh.
Okay, folks, how about getting
We
the
did
liquors
it.
a big one? Go on.
Well done, Helen. We got them out. Phew, and after all that black country legging, here's just the place to get black country legless. The Bottle and Glass, the Black Country Village's own pub, and mine host, Arthur Devonport. I'm very thirsty. I've had a very enjoyable day. I think I better have a black country pint of bitter. This isn't the famous beer home brewed in the kitchen at the back, is it?
No, but it's brewed in Dudley.
In Dudley?
Yes.
Oh, splendid. Well, that couldn't be better. I've just spent the day in Dudley. In the old days, the Bottle and Glass served chain makers and glass workers. Today, it offers welcome refreshment to the museum visitors. There you are. I told you the Black Country was the place for beer. Cheers. I need it. Ah, beautiful. The pub serves up a very palatable ploughman's lunch, too. Originally, it stood by the side of the canal in Brierley Hill. And now, with its wood-burning fires and sawdust on the floor, it's exactly the place to wind up your visit to a fascinating living museum. Well, it's been quite a day. I've seen an elephant and a castle. I've travelled back in time by rail, by air, and by water. I've been to the chapel and to the pub, and now I'm going to ask Fred to take me back to the present day in his tram. Why don't you enjoy a black country day out as well? Bye. Okay, Fred, take her away.